It's December 3rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with some positive news regarding inflation. Consumer prices in South Korea rose 1.5% in November, a sign that inflation may be under control, with the figure hovering below the 2% range for the third straight month. The U.S. says it's slapping a new chip export control package on China, including restrictions on high-end chips for AI that will also likely strike a blow against South Korean firms. Israel struck targets in southern Lebanon, leaving 2 people dead on Monday, with Hezbollah also firing projectiles at Israel. While expressing concerns, Washington at the same time believes the ongoing ceasefire is still being considered a success. Consumer prices in South Korea continues to stabilize on the back of low oil prices, with inflation remaining in the 1% range for 3 straight months. Data from the Statistics Korea on Tuesday showed that the country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, rose 1.5% in November compared to the same month last year. Oil prices fell by more than 5%, contributing to the decline in price hikes, but vegetable prices remained high, increasing more than 10% year-on-year. President Jaemincheon will hold a summit with Kyrgyz President Japarov on Tuesday as South Korea looks to increase engagement with Kyrgyzstan and other Central Asian countries. According to Yoon's office, the leaders will meet at around 11 a.m. at the Yongsan Presidential Office during Japarov's official visit to South Korea. The presidents are expected to discuss ways to expand cooperation in trade, investment, development cooperation, and people-to-people exchanges, as well as regional and international issues. Now, following their talks, a joint signing ceremony will take place before an official luncheon. Earlier this year, South Korea announced its new K-Silk Road initiative to engage with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. And a summit between Seoul and the 5 Central Asian countries is expected to take place here in South Korea next year. Reports of Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire agreement violations continue to be reported as 2 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon on Monday. Despite this, Washington says the ceasefire agreement has been successful. Lee Seung-jae reports.
On the 6th day of the 60-day ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah, 2 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon on Monday. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, 1 person was killed in an Israeli airstrike some 10 kilometers from the Israeli border. It added that the other fatality was a soldier on duty 12 kilometers from the border who was killed in an Israeli drone attack. Nabi Berri, the Speaker of the Lebanese parliament who mediated the ceasefire on behalf of Hezbollah, issued a statement condemning the attack as a clear violation of the terms of the ceasefire agreement. However, the Israeli military also claimed that it had carried out several airstrikes in Lebanon over the past few days in response to what they say were Hezbollah's violations of the ceasefire agreement. With both sides accusing each other of violations, Hezbollah fired 2 projectiles toward Israeli-occupied territory, marking its first attack since the ceasefire went into effect. Reports say that both the U.S. and French governments have issued warnings to Israel, saying they believe the Israeli military has violated the ceasefire agreement. UNIFIL, the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon, also said that Israel breached the ceasefire agreement approximately 100 times since last week. Despite this, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller says the ceasefire agreement has been successful.
So what we have seen since the ceasefire went into effect is it being successful. Broadly speaking, it has been successful in stopping the fighting and getting us on a path where we are not seeing the just daily loss of life that we had seen for 2 months prior.
Saying any ceasefire agreement would see some violations, Miller said Washington and Paris have set up a mechanism to look into reports of violations, adding it will engage with the Israeli and Lebanese military. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The UN reports that at least 44 civilians have died and nearly 50,000 have been displaced since the civil war intensified in northwestern Syria last month. According to a situation report released by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, continuous airstrikes and shelling have been reported in Idlib and Aleppo regions. It added that another 162 people have been injured. Among the dead were 12 children and 7 women. The report raised concerns that the number of refugees has been rising at an alarming pace, jumping more than 14,000 last week to more than 48,500. Foreign ministers of the 32 NATO countries are holding their last meeting of the year this week, with Ukraine now insisting that NATO membership could help end the hot phase with Russia. Let's turn to Dr. Ronald Suni for more. Hello there, Dr. Suni.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm in good shape.
Let's start with what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is insisting. He's saying the membership would allow him to negotiate a ceasefire deal with Russia. Now, isn't this the first time that Zelensky has mentioned the possibility of a ceasefire?
In the past, Zelensky has talked about, ending the war, but with no concessions of territory whatsoever to the Russians. That is, they even claim they want Crimea back, which Russians have held since 2014. But now, Zelensky is saying that he could see making concessions. He's being very careful. That is, they could stop the war now, where the armies are standing, because recently the Russians have been advancing. The Ukrainians are running out of manpower. So this is very important that finally they bring this thing to an end. And then later, Zelensky says, we can decide diplomatically about whether there would be concessions made about the land. So he says, let's stop the hot war now. We can talk about concessions later. This is new.
But I'm sure NATO itself is in a very challenging, position. What kind of stance will NATO take with just 1 month left until the Biden administration in the U.S. ends its term?
First of all, the Russian government has made it clear that it will not tolerate NATO membership.
Right.
Ukraine can go into the European Union, but not NATO membership. The Trump-Vance government, according to Vance's statements in September, were that the land concessions would be made to the Russians, but Ukraine would remain neutral, not in NATO. Zelensky, on the other hand, in this latest statement, is saying, okay, we can have a ceasefire, but NATO must guarantee the unoccupied parts of Ukraine remain under NATO protection. So you see, it's a very delicate negotiation. And everyone is waiting for the Trump administration to take power. We have a very strange situation here in the United States. We have a kind of interregnum, or better to say, we have what Russians once called dual power. There are two governments.
Right.
There's the actual government that's ruling, Biden, and then there's the anticipated Trump government, which is putting people into positions of power who are pushing for this new ceasefire and concessions to Russia.
Dr. Suni, then let's talk about the incoming Trump administration. Like you mentioned, Trump's Ukraine envoy pick is Keith Kellogg. Now, he's been all about ending the war. What kind of deal do you think the Trump administration and Kellogg will offer Ukraine instead of giving Ukraine the NATO membership that it's been eager to get?
General Kellogg was a critic and is still a critic of the Biden administration. They went too slow. They didn't do enough. We should fight this war. And now, as he's moved toward the Trump administration, he's accepted the Trump position that there ought to be a ceasefire, that the war should come to an end. And it's clear that Trump, for all of his faults and all of his ways of acting, in fact, wants to bring these wars to an end. And he's ready to make concessions to Russia in order to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. He doesn't seem to like wars, foreign wars that the United States is wasting its money and manpower in, mostly money, of course. And he's also planning in some odd way to bring the war in Gaza also to an end. But there he's going to make major concessions through his Christian Zionist appointments, like the new ambassador to Israel, that will, in fact, basically end any Palestinian dreams of statehood.
I see. Well, let's talk about other partners getting involved in the Ukraine crisis, not just Russia, but also North Korea, having already transferred over, reportedly, 100 artillery systems. The question is, will these systems actually play a big role in taking down the Russian forces?
So Russia, like Ukraine, has suffered from a manpower shortage. The Ukrainians have no one but Ukrainians to fight their wars. Americans fight wars by supplying arms and intelligence, but no manpower.
Right.
We fight other people's bodies. But Russia has solved its manpower problem. First of all, Putin doesn't want to have a mobilization of Russians because there's opposition to that. People flee abroad, etc. And so how did they solve it? They're having North Koreans come. Tens of thousands. Who knows how many will come? They're already in Kursk. Fighting is going on. Ukraine is claiming that some North Koreans have been killed. And the North Koreans are using artillery, their artillery, against Ukraine. So this is a war now between Russia and North Korea on one side, Ukraine and NATO on the other.
Well, Dr. Soony, like you mentioned, we don't know how many more soldiers from North Korea to be dispatched to Russia, but what's your take on it? How many rounds of, deployment to Russia to come in the future, and, how often or until how long?
Here's the main thing. Right now, Russia is advancing. The Ukrainians are adding to their manpower. They're in a more powerful position. Ukrainians have realized, and the West has realized, and even NATO has realized, that if the war goes on, the Russians are going to triumph, and just more and more Ukrainians, as well as Russians and North Koreans, will be killed. So this is a war of attrition. And all sides now are interested in some kind of ceasefire. And that may come in the next months, I would think, in the first month or two after Trump gets into office. And Russia's biggest backer, remember, is China, and China has repeatedly called for the Russians to bring this war in Ukraine to an end.
Alrighty, Dr. Soony, thanks much for sharing your insight and your time with us this morning. You enjoy your evening there.
You too. 감사합니다.
Washington has introduced new export controls aimed at limiting China's semiconductor and AI development, now which could impact major South Korean semiconductor companies like SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics. Yoon explains.
The U.S. government announced Monday the introduction of new export controls to limit China's ability to build advanced semiconductors and develop AI for military use. The restrictions affect both U.S. companies and foreign companies that use American technology in their chip-making equipment. As part of the controls, the U.S. will also stop exporting HBM, or high-bandwidth memory, which is vital for AI chips, to China. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, the new measures, which follow two similar packages over the past 2 years, are aimed at limiting China's ability to produce advanced chips for its military modernization. 140 Chinese companies were added to the Commerce Department's export curb list, which means U.S. and foreign companies, including chip manufacturers like Huawei and companies that make the equipment to produce chips, require a license to export to them. The new rules cover 24 types of chip-making tools not previously restricted. The U.S. will also apply a rule called the Foreign Direct Product Rule, which will impact non-U.S. companies using U.S. technology in their tools. Most chip-making tools are in this category. Washington has reportedly exempted Japan and some European allies, including the Netherlands, after they agreed to set their own export restrictions. South Korea may get an exemption later. But the move could negatively affect South Korean companies like SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics, which control over 90% of the global HBM market. Samsung, in particular, may be impacted as a large portion of its HBM sales, around 30%, go to China, including through Hong Kong. On the same day, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian criticized U.S. restrictions, saying they are disruptive to international trade and supply chains. He said that China would take action to protect its companies' rights. China's Commerce Ministry also condemned the U.S. curbs, calling them a form of economic coercion and unfair practices. This comes shortly before Republican President-elect Donald Trump takes office, and he's expected to continue many of Biden's tough measures against China. Yoon, Arirang News.
U.S. automaker General Motors has announced it will sell its share in a $2.6 billion EV battery plant in Michigan to its partner, South Korea's LG Energy Solution. GM confirmed in a press release on Monday that the sale is part of a non-binding agreement with the South Korean battery supplier, with the sale set for the first quarter of next year. The nearly completed plant in Lansing was meant to be the third battery facility of their joint venture, Ultium Cells LLC, after plants in Ohio and Tennessee. GM is adjusting its EV production due to slower consumer demand and also uncertainty over future EV incentives. The car maker expects to get back its $1 billion investment in the plant. Efforts continue to jazz up Korea's small towns. Among them is Jaemincheon village, being revitalized by young people's creative ideas. Our Park Gong checked it out.
Rejuvenating previously abandoned spaces. Jaemincheon village, once at the epicenter of Gongju city, located in Chungcheongnam-do province, had been abandoned for many years. That's until several young people, relocated from other areas including the capital region, started revitalizing vacant houses and unused spaces with the support of the Interior Ministry. This old house was once a tailor shop but was abandoned for many years. But now, thanks to the creativity and dedication of young people who have moved into this area, it has been transformed into an inviting and cozy cafe. These remodeled structures built decades ago have not just turned into cafes, but also restaurants and guest houses and hotels with the creative ideas of young resettlers. Thanks to these efforts, the total population, which includes residents and the floating population like tourists, has been rising continuously. Over 126,000 more people were added to that total population in Q2 of 2024 compared to the previous quarter. That's especially noticeable as Gongju City has been designated by the Interior Ministry as one of the 89 areas in Korea seeing a population shrink. One young worker who moved into the area says there's still some space for improvement.
It's still lacking in infrastructure for young people to come here. I hope that in the near future, it can become a neighborhood where those young people can live a happier life while doing what they want.
However, despite some inconveniences, one young restaurant owner says that can be a strength.
Seoul is very complex, competitive, and things are built and they disappear quickly. It's a much slower pace here, and I find that more attractive. Local residents are very friendly, enough to help you and give advice, which has been really encouraging.
She added she wishes to keep living as a small local restaurant owner even in the future, so that she can keep introducing the beauty of Korean food to people visiting the region. Park Gong, Arirang News, Gongju.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Kim Seong. Good morning, Seong.
Good morning, Dami.
So why don't we begin in France and some expected political instability there. What's going on?
Yeah, that's right, Dami. The French government is facing almost certain collapse as opposition parties plan to vote for a no-confidence motion. Now, both the left-wing coalition and populist right-wing have said they plan to vote for a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Michel Barnier, who said he will force a divisive social security budget through Parliament without a vote on Monday. The French minority government's Prime Minister invoked Article 49.3 of the country's constitution on Monday to push his budget through without a vote in Parliament. Now, furious opposition parties responded, saying they would oust the new PM in a vote that could take place as soon as Wednesday. Left-wing MP Alexis Corbière said Monday that that's it for Barnier, he's out of here, while National Rally Party leader Marine Le Pen said she could bring down the government if the country's budget bill stays as it is. Barnier is almost certain to lose in a vote of no confidence, which would make him the shortest-serving prime minister since 1958. Now, the budget bill for the coming year must be passed by December 21st. In Guinea, a crowd crush following a fan violence at a football game on Sunday has killed at least 56 people. According to a local journalist covering the game, many of the deaths took place by the stadium gates, where spectators rushed to escape, causing a stampede. Now, Guinea News said rival fans stormed the game field in protest of a referee's call. Witnesses say security forces also deployed tear gas. Now, the crush happened at the final of a football tournament in Nzerekore, one of the country's largest cities. The West African country has announced 3 days of national mourning starting Tuesday. US chipmaker Intel announced on Monday that its CEO, Pat Gelsinger, has retired from the company after a difficult tenure failing to revive the former industry leader. Intel said Gelsinger's retirement was effective as of December 1st. Now, 63-year-old Gelsinger, who has worked for Intel for decades, returned as the company's chief executive officer in February 2021. The semiconductor giant's stock price plunged 61% during his near 4-year stint. Intel in August said that it would lay off over 15% of its staff as part of a $10 billion cost reduction plan, which Gelsinger said was necessary to fundamentally change the way we operate. Now, Intel named David Zinsner and Michelle Johnston Holthaus as interim co-CEOs until the board agrees on a new CEO. 77-year-old British singer Elton John said on Monday that he was unable to watch the theatrical piece he wrote the score for as he has lost his sight. Speaking on the red carpet for the launch of the musical The Devil Wears Prada, he said that it's hard for me to see, but I love to hear it and it sounded good tonight. Elton John previously said in a November interview that he had lost his vision in his right eye while on vacation in July. He said that his left eye was also not the greatest, meaning he may no longer be able to see or watch or read anything.
After the dusty but warm afternoon we had yesterday, which helped to melt the snow and see the leftover autumn leaves that were covered with snow, things have gotten much colder again. Seoul is below -2 degrees, but it feels like -5, and Incheon is under a cold wave advisory this morning. And Paju and Cheoron are waking up to a colder morning. Temperatures have dropped to 5 to 10 degrees lower than yesterday, and colder air will keep below average temperatures in play for the first half of the week, along with strong winds. Now, it will stay partly to mostly sunny during the day, but from tonight, some of the capital area and Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces could see a mix of rain and snow. Then Jeollado provinces are forecast to see frequent snow at the end of the week. Checking on today's highs now, Seoul gets up to only 4 degrees, which is about 10 degrees lower than yesterday. Daegu and Gongju will make it to 8 degrees. Stay cozy and warm today. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room. Obviously, you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
The president also remains committed to boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of this latest.
To discuss the current security environment.
The United Nations is powerful on the ongoing security, expressing hope stock markets around the world have taken a hit. Speculation that the U.S. Federal Reserve
Arirang.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.
We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Tuesday, December 3rd here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and this is News Generation. Today we're joined by Cheska Dainha.
Happy Tuesday and happy December, everyone.
Happy Tuesday, happy December. And Yoon Sang-yeol.
Happy December.
Happy December. Now both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So it's Tuesday, time to explore the latest trends in Korean culture. Let's take a look at the screen to find out more on today's topic.
From YOLO to YONO, we've covered our generation's spending habits on NewsGen before, but it seems like there's always something new coming up. Today, we're going to talk about a new consumption trend among our generation.
So we're talking about consumption trends among our generation today because lately a spending limit challenge has been trending among young people. So Cheska, can you tell us a bit more about what it is?
And I loved the opening statement.
Really?
From YOLO to YONO.
Thank you.
I think this topic is quite interesting, especially in Korean. It's called 자린고비 challenge, and 자린고비 basically means extreme frugality.
Right.
And this is a huge shift from YOLO to now people are saying yo, no.
Yo, no.
Yo, no. And when something trends, where do we see it? Obviously on social media. So apparently the quote-unquote challenge is to spend about 350,000 won, which is $250 US, on a monthly basis.
Wow.
I personally don't think the amount is what's important, but rather it's the fact that they're actually limiting their budget and cutting down everything to the bare minimum. Now, living with their parents to save on rent, even bringing like coffee in their tumblers from home, and even risking eating with your boss to save on your lunch money, and using coupons and points and etc. Yeah.
Wow, I mean 350,000 Korean won, $250. Well, I think that sticking to this limit for me is unrealistic, even if I live with my parents. So I want to ask you guys, based on your spending habits, do you think this is realistic for you?
Apparently, this was the minimum, very bare minimum amount that was set on a news article that can be spent on a monthly basis. And this was actually based on a finance person in her 20s who lives with her parents to save up. And I actually saw the categories, and the spending actually included food, fashion, beauty, living supplies, and even a very small amount set aside for like gift and activities. And I looked at the chart, and I was actually very impressed. But I honestly think I could do it.
You can do it.
I could. But the only downside is, Sang-yeok knows this, when you're living alone, you do have to spend a bit more on other areas such as food and supplies because you're not sharing with your parents. So if you're living with somebody else, somebody might restock your fridge, so you would have to spend less. But for us, everything we buy is the only thing we have.
Right.
So maybe a little bit more, but I think I can manage, yeah.
Well, a big respect, Cheska. Big respect. Then what about you, Sang-yeok? Do you think this is possible for you?
Well, not for me.
Not for you.
I'm the person who works for a month and spends all the salary for a month, and then works for a month over and over again. Yeah, but I can actually relate to why other young people are so obsessed with saving their budget, because the inflation has gone up way beyond the limit these days, and also these kind of inflation cannot be handled easily with your salary, especially if you have just started to work in a company. So the price for your lunch already exceeds 10,000 won. That is about $8. So the high interest rate also discourages young people from actually buying houses or getting loans. So instead of going YOLO, like you mentioned, young people are now tightening their budget to save more money.
Right, and going no. And this is not only this challenge that we're seeing, there are other saving or spending trends among our generation that we're seeing recently. So could you introduce some of the trends or habits that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so not only the young people actually save the money for themselves, but actually they're sharing sharing their habits online on social media with others. So MZers are like sharing their know-how and tips on saving the budget by sharing the videos on their Instagram feeds to portray on how to live only with cash or how to make delicious lunchboxes to save the cost for lunch meals. So this has even gone extreme with a social trend referred to as loud budgeting, which means sharing the habit of saving with others and even encouraging others to actually jump onto the bandwagon and to join them on saving the cost.
So it's kind of becoming like a more community, a big challenge, not only involving individuals, but like our generation or even a bigger group. And what's really interesting is that we kind of mentioned this earlier, from going YOLO or no-no, YONO, is how these trends, including this challenge, are all about saving money or being frugal, as both of you guys mentioned. And it's the exact opposite of what we used to see with flexing, which we talked about on Newsden before, which is the trend of extravagant spending to showcase wealth or a carefree attitude. So, Cheska, what do you think has caused this shift?
I think you pointed it out quite accurately. That's why I find this trend to be quite fascinating, to be honest. And I personally think it is so much better than the flexing culture that we have had and the showcasing of, as you mentioned, the extravagant purchases, which is one of the types of videos that people actually do. And I think young people can get very easily influenced by them. And social media is perfectly made trap to display that side of life. But I think people are actually starting to realize that this was an actual interview in the article, that those facades of superficial wealth could not actually be maintained in the kind of economy that we live now. So now many of the MZOs are saving up to invest or even create funds to actually do what they really want to do.
So they're thinking more in long term for their future. And Cheska, you also mentioned this, and Sang-hyuk, you also mentioned this in your previous answers, but young people are actually sharing their frugal lifestyles online, which is also once again very different from the past when social media was filled with posts showing off luxury purchases like cars and luxury bags. So I want to also ask your opinion on why this change has happened.
Yeah, because I was also really surprised of this quick shift into this new trend.
Very quick.
Yeah, because a few years ago, if I remember correctly, people were running after Chanel bags. And also
they were standing in a line.
Yeah, right. And they were also like posting their Instagram feeds with their well-manipulated luxurious life. But this has completely turned upside down these days. And now the youth are actually sharing their knowledge and tips on how to save the budget with others. And I think these kind of postings are not actually they don't actually feel it embarrassing, or they don't believe that this is overly stingy. Rather, they feel proud that they can save the cost of their budgets. And by posting these kind of feeds online, I think they can also feel a sense of bond with others, so that they can actually relate with the people that are similar to them. And they can also have this mutual relations and also feel rewarded if they post how much they save for this month and feel some sort of accomplishments, which is understandable.
Right. So from online challenges and also to sharing your frugality, your frugal lifestyle online, this focus on extreme saving has also led to more creative ways to save money. So are there any other additional examples that you'd like to share?
Just to add on to what Sang-hyuk said, I think a lot of MZers feel the sense of empowerment too. We talked about here on the life of 가tseng, which is the combination of the word gat and then seng, which means life. So when they are able to share some of their testimonials with the group, it's not something that they shy away from, but it's actually something they're proud of, and they're actually making or creating their own lives. So one of the simplest ways that they can do that is by having these group chat rooms. So they post open chat room, share their budget, even spending, and they even share their list of commodities that they bought and encourage each other. And even banks are going out of their ways to create so many interesting savings accounts that are super easy to create and access. I mean, I created one, and all you need to do is just a few clicks, and then boom, you have a saving account for like a month or for a year. And one of the things that I actually found very interesting was, I think, to reflect the lifestyle of our generation, these savings account and banks are creating it like a game. So
we love games.
We love games, and they're so cute. So if you put a certain amount of money, it's like a quest. You get another item. Like I think there was one. So taringobi actually is a type of fish, right? It's a fish dish. So when you invest more money, it gives you different displays of like fish. on your plate. So I think they're really targeting clients that are exclusively in their 20s and 30s to make it even more fun and attractive for people to save more. Yeah.
I mean, this is really different from the past because in the past, when we wanted to save money, it was like writing down on a notebook how much you used, or just saving your money on the bank account.
Pasting receipts like on a piece of paper,
But they've definitely gotten more creative, more fun, such as the cute fish character that you mentioned. So, Sang-young, are there any other ways that young people are saving creatively?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we're seeing a different trend. So in the past, the time span for the bank savings was like more than 10 years. But these days, major banks are releasing special savings products with shorter time span of maturity, and also the young people can deposit the money in a small amount. And I think it reflects the current trend where the young people really wants to like gain some kind of accomplishments within a really short amount of time, but at the same time feel rewarded as they save a penny or dollar or two like for a month or 2 months. And so this is also understandable because many people are actually having difficulties in economic budgets these days. And also, as I was doing research for this, I really found another interesting, apart from using characters.
Please share.
Okay, so idol bias savings. So I think this resonates with the K-pop culture. So whenever your favorite idol is involved in something, for example, if your band group releases a new song, then you deposit a small amount of money in the bank account.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but
that's very interesting.
So if your band only makes a comeback in every 4 years,
then you make the deposit only once in 4 years.
My savings account only worth like once 4 years.
Yeah, I guess so. So you have to wish that your idol groups makes comeback.
Makes comeback like once a month, once a month. Yeah. And you mentioned how young people are now depositing a small amount of money for a short amount of time because that kind of gives them a sense of accomplishment. I think that I'm the perfect example because last year I used to deposit like 1/5 of my monthly income, and then I received that money earlier this year, and I feel great. I felt like a great sense of accomplishment.
Did you do something with that money?
I just put it back to another savings account to make it bigger. So it's going to keep on getting bigger.
It's actually a good way to do so, because if the time span is too long, it really makes you feel tired.
Right.
That's true.
So that is my way of saving money. What about you?
I have a housing subscription savings, so which is you put the money in for potentially, knock on wood, being able to get into the lottery-based system of the subscription here in South Korea. The other thing is I really want to, but because I live alone and I work on myself on freelancer, I had some business expenses that I needed to. But the best one that worked for me is actually using a check card, so debit card. And what I used to do way back when I was just starting out in society is I would only put 50,000 won in check card. That's about only $40.
Right.
And it was like a mind trick that I used, because when I run out of it, I would have to transfer the money, right? So it was extra. I was making it difficult to spend money, and then also having to check each time how much I was putting into it. And also I try to set a fixed amount for monthly spending. But like I said, I haven't been so keen on it since I had to purchase some other stuff, but only use one credit card for mileage purposes. So making sure that my credit card and my check card actually has benefits that I can use, I think is one of the ways that I try to save.
That's quite a useful advice for our viewers. What about you, Sang-young?
Well, just like Chaska, I also have the housing subscription accounts for the future plans, but I tend to go for the jackpot. So I do investments in stocks. Yes, so for the stock market, it has been showing a downward trend, so I'm kind of failed at the moment. But now, luckily, the Bitcoin has gained an uptick these days, so I think it's a good news for me. But anyhow, these kind of stock markets or Bitcoins are not a long-lasting investment plan. They could always somehow get destroyed or fall down. So I really I'm currently looking for something that is stable stable, like a pension system that the country provides. And of course, I try to limit my budget every month to a certain level. But of course, when there are special occasions like wedding ceremonies, or if I have to buy birthday gifts, I have no choice but to overspend. So currently, I'm trying to control my budgets as much as possible.
Right. So we in the studio are all into saving, I guess. And let's talk a bit more about the perception of saving or being frugal before we move on, because in the past, being overly frugal was often seen negatively. 자린고비, Cheska kind of mentioned this term, with terms like stingy or penny pincher used to describe it. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think in our generation, there are wide spectrum of people when it comes to money, that I don't think the flexing culture is going to go away. There's social media, and I think people are still going to try to showcase or try to shop in ways that are more for display rather than for actual substance. However, MZers are known to be very finance savvy. As Sangyeok is one of the great examples, but I know a lot of my friends who are doing stock options, who are studying to invest. They take online courses on how to do real estate. So one of the reasons I think that the people are doing this finance challenge in our episode isn't really just to save like a few penny here and a few penny there. It's really to create a fund for them to either invest or to create a larger fund for their future well-beings. So in that case, I think it goes more than just frugality. I think it's trying to be a little bit more proactive in terms of preparing for the future.
Yeah, planning out for your future.
Exactly, yeah.
What's your opinion on this?
Well, just to add on to what Cheska mentioned, she really made a good point, because I think it's not being stingy or anything, but it's actually people having a huge interest in managing their financial budgets. And I think this is a good sign, actually, because I necessarily think that young people should learn these kind of financial management from their middle school or high school, because these things are closely related to our lives instead of math or English or history or whatever. But anyway, the financial management itself is really crucial for our lives. So whatever the way, I think the best way is to keep the middle ground. So rather than overspending or underspending, it's really important to maintain a stable amount of budget following the current trend and the logic of the economy.
Right, so definitely keeping a balance does seem important. Now, we mostly talked about ourselves, so we're now going to listen to our viewers. We also asked them if they are saving money and why. Let's take a look at some of their answers. If we look at the comments, RKZLTV, I'm saving up for my future in general. MSC, dentist glasses emergency fund. Benny D97 says, my family uses it for school tuition fees since my siblings are still in college, and groceries for daily needs. So we've taken a look at our viewers' comments as well. To find out more about what's behind these spending habits among our generation of saving, we're going to invite an expert to our talks after a short break.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Today we're joined by Shin Myung-gyu, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University in Seoul. Welcome, Professor Shim, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Professor, what do you think is driving young people to save money so intensely, as we mentioned in our discussion earlier?
Maybe there are several reasons why young people want to save more, but I think there are two main reasons behind this sin. First, as anyone can easily infer, housing price has skyrocketed over time, especially in Korea. According to recent data, price-to-income ratio in Seoul is greater than 11, which means that a household that earns 80 million won as a yearly household income should save more than 11 years without any consumption to buy a house. For comparison, let me give you the number that we saw 10 years ago. It was 7.5. So it is natural that young people who need a house to live in should save more than before, given that the interest rate has become so high after the COVID-19 crisis, because it is not that easy to make a loan. And also, the second reason is that the young people expect that they cannot rely on national pension system, given that the fertility rate in Korea has become extremely low. So they should insure against the negative income shock after the retirement, which makes them to save more than before.
Professor, this YOLO lifestyle is just one of the many trends of our generation. So why do you think our generation has this wide spectrum of spending habits, from people who are going all out to people who are trying to save as much as they can?
Yeah, to me, the most important reason behind this diverse pattern is that the economic environment has changed a lot, especially during the last decade. Before 2021, what we experienced was a very extremely low interest environment, so that we don't have that many incentives to save because it does not give any additional profit. So we want to consume more. But after 2022, we observed the high inflation rate, and the Fed or any central banks increased interest a lot. So it increased the cost, it increased the benefit of saving. So people try to save more. And the recession that Korean economy has experienced for the last several years has also impacted the young people in particular a lot, because the labor market has tightened, especially for them. So they need to lower their consumption but increase saving.
Okay, so Professor, just like you mentioned, I think we're seeing a repetitive trends that are keep changing. So a few years ago, we saw low interest rates, and now high interest rates are making young people to actually save their budgets. Now, from your perspective, do you anticipate another new spending trend to emerge soon?
What I expect is that the current trend, which seems to be called to be YOLO, you only live once, trend can be prolonged for a relatively long time. The first reason behind this is that, as I pointed out earlier, life after retirement is not that guaranteed with this extremely low fertility rate. So young people should save more to prepare for their future. The second reason is that because of the president re-elect in the US, what he and his government will do is to conduct policies that may push the inflation rate up again, which makes the purchasing power of the young people and also the other people to be low, because high inflation makes the purchasing power to be low. So what I expect is that the current trend, which emphasize rather than saving, which emphasize saving rather than consuming now, can be prolonged than expected.
All right, we'll have to see. All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so today we've taken a look at the spending and saving habits among young people. Hoped our discussion today helped you learn more about our generation. And that's all the time we have for today, but Newsgen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Cheska Daino.
Pleasure's always mine, thank you.
Thank you. And Im Sang-yeol.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here, add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view, as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
Heaven is another man.